Chapter 6. Accidents happen. Don't shoot the messenger. After fishing me out of the sea of bullets, Mustang and Crosshair forced me to rest, whilst they made sure all the robots were no longer hostile. It took them a few hours, giving me time to sort out the bullets. However, my chest began to ache over time, gradually getting worse and worse. Eventually, it became so bad that I had to lie down and curl up to try and somewhat alleviate the pain. I wanted a shot of Med-X, but there were none in my saddlebags. Just as I decided getting up was more trouble than staying on the floor, I heard footsteps behind me. "Inkwell, why did you not say you were hurt?" Crosshair asked, leaning into my vision. I absently noticed he still hadn't cleaned off the ash from his nose. "I didn't feel it," I choked out, gritting my teeth in pain. "Not until now. Didn't want you guys worrying. Anyways, ow. I think her rib's floating. Again." "You idiot. What part of pretending not to be hurt made any sense?" Crosshair asked, hooves up in the air in frustration. "Mustang, get in here. I need you to carry our elder." Crosshair reached out with his saddlebags and removed a syringe. "Probably best you are not awake for this. Pity. There's only half a dose of Med-X left. It'll have to do, I suppose." Crosshair stuck the needle into me, plunging me into sweet release. Then he punched me in the face. I recoiled from the sudden blow. "Ow! Crosshair, what?" Crosshair raised his hoof again. "As I said, Elder, best you're not awake. This one should knock you out." This time, his hoof struck me right on the temple, and I was out like a light. I'm floating. The feeling of weightlessness fills me as I swim through the air. I bump into a wall, glancing around as I realize I'm in a small room, the room rattling all around me. Furniture floats up around me, the bed, desk, even my chair. My eyes lock into the wardrobe bolted to the wall. Realization hits me as I recognize my surroundings. I'm back on the airship, right when it was crashing. I'm now touching the ceiling like a spider. I easily walk along its surface and pull myself over, not to the wardrobe, but to the door leading to the hallway beyond. I grasp the door with my hoof, and the heat sears my flesh and fur, blackening it as I pull away. The door itself grows brighter and hotter as it melts before my eyes.
"Still happy I'm dead?"
I knew that voice. Knew it from somewhere before Wintertrot. No. The pony was dead. I saw them dead and burnt. The pony in full Steel Ranger armor walked into the melted doorway, shining and shimmering from the white-hot metal that was surrounding her. I recognized the mare, even though her mane was gone and her face was extremely burnt, but only because of the obnoxious non-regulation earrings she always wore.
"Jackknife?"
I squeaked, slowly floating backwards. Waving my legs to steady myself in freefall, I watched her walk into the room in dumbfounded horror. "I saw you die! On the airship!"
Aw, isn't that cute? You really think a little old fire can stop me from tormenting you?
She cackled, the flesh on her cheeks close to tearing. She licked her lips, her tongue made of what looked like liquid fire.
"Get back! You're dead! Dead! I collected your dog tag."
Something flashed in the flickering light, and I looked over to see a little bit of metal on its chain, wrapped around my hoof. Jackknife scowled, stamping over to me and tried to pull it away. But her hooves couldn't get it off. Try as she might, she eventually gave up with a huff.
"You little thief. Stealing from your superiors. Let's see what the Elder has to say about this."
She flung me over her back, and the glowing metal of her armor seared my chest, eliciting a sharp pain. She stalked through the burning corridors of molten metal, unaffected by the white-hot flames that licked at her hooves. She carried me through a roughly cut hole, the searing heat being replaced by incredible cold. We were outside of the airship, snow surrounding us on all sides. Nearly 100 ponies were out there, all of them horribly mutilated by the fire. A pony wearing robes that had partially melted and fused to his flesh turned to look at me. "Ah, Initiate. Sorry. Treasurer Inkwell."
"You're dead." You died in the inferno, Elder Ratchet.
The burning form of the former elder grinned horribly, reaching for my hoof and trying to pull away another dog tag I hadn't realized I was holding. The grin quickly vanished, replaced by a bony scowl. "Give it back, initiate," he rasped, struggling to pull the dog tag held limply in my hoof. "You have to let it go."
I can't. I can't. I don't know why, but I just can't.
The mob of burned ponies seemed to close in, ever so slightly.
It's not like I want to carry these.
My hoof had become burdened under thick rings of dog tags, their names blurry and unrecognizable. "Fine. Don't let go, then. Keep hanging on to this hopeless endeavor," Elder Ratchet said, flailing his forehooves into the gesture of a mock defeat. His voice was slowly coming out more clearly, losing the rasp. "You have no concept of what leadership means. You think it's all about getting ponies to listen to you?" His tone became firm, like my drill sergeant back at basic training.
I don't know, but I'm trying.
I paused, taking a quick breath.
I'm trying really, really hard.
The silence that greeted me was chilling. For a few moments, no pony spoke. I glanced around, noticing it had stopped snowing. The ponies around me weren't burnt husks anymore. They were flesh and blood. They were all staring at me expectantly. "Do not try to be a good elder," Ratchet spoke carefully, as if trying to find the words to say. "Be a good elder."
How'll I know? What if I get a bitch like Jackknife in my contingent?
"Hey!" Jack shouted indignantly. "There is always a bitch like Jackknife in our contingent," Ratchet explained calmly.
Hey!
Jackknife shouted again, to the amusement of every pony. "But it is how you handle them that matters." I glanced around at the sea of familiar faces, the dog tags no longer seeming heavy in my hooves.
Thank you. I'll try not to screw up too bad,
I replied. Sighing, Elder Ratchet faced off gently. "Probably the best we'll get." The world began to blur as I felt myself drifting away again. But before I could get away, Ratchet's almost accusing voice cut through the fog. "And remember, only recruit ponies." As I floated away, I pretended not to hear that.
What? I'm kind of fading out fast here.
"Oh, shit." I could just barely make him out as he cursed. "He's already got a damn..." I awoke, feeling not refreshed, but definitely better. Glancing around, I realized I was in the medical wing of the stable. Dust-coated gurneys and dustier beds filled the room. My saddlebags were lying next to my bed. Searching through them revealed that they were devoid of any medics, though. "He's gone quiet. Do you think he's woken up?" Mustang whispered, failing miserably at being quiet. His natural deep voice echoed into the empty corridors. "I doubt that he is still asleep. The amount of medics that I had given him was hardly enough to tranquilize him," Crosshair replied calmly. There was an awkward silence as their hooves got closer. "Good thing he had all those spare medic syringes. I wouldn't have wanted him to feel what you were doing to him either." So that's where my medics went. I fumed silently for a moment, but let it go for now. I could always get some more later. Mustang and Crosshair finally passed by the observation room window. I waved at them as they entered the room. "Elder, what are you doing?" Crosshair asked suspiciously. "I don't know," I said a bit listlessly. Putting out my hoof, I realized I had twisted the chains of dog tags around it. Holding them up, I looked at him for a moment. Thinking. Crosshair seemed to pick up on what I was feeling and remained respectfully silent. Mustang, on the other hoof, was unaware. "What a fascinating collection of dog tags! I didn't know you collected them," he stated, sounding genuinely curious. "I don't," I said dully. I went to lift up my own, but found it was missing. Panicking slightly, I glanced around before finding it laying on my bedside table. "Oh, my apologies, Elder. I was unaware of how important they were to you. I'll just... An awkward silence threatened to fall upon us, but was quickly squashed by a tinny voice.
Stand clear. Stand clear. Patient detected.
A robot hovered into the room. Crosshair and Mustang leveled their guns at it, but hesitated when the robot didn't react.
All firearms must have their safeties on when not in the firing range. Please put your weapon safeties on, or security will be notified.
Well, do what it says! The last thing that we want is a stable security online again. With reluctance, both of them put their weapons safeties on and allowed the robot to hover over to me. It was a Mr. Handy model, specifically programmed as a doctor. The Ministry of Peace cross with 3 butterflies was painted on the side.
Good evening, patient. Ticket unidentified. I am the stable's official diagnostic robot and medical dispenser.
The robot moved one of its eye stalks forward.
Performing diagnostic spell.
A beam of light passed over me. The robot made several strange beeping sounds as it processed the data.
I cannot inform you of your problems. Your guests will have to wait outside of the room.
Oh, I could tell just by looking at the both of them that both of my companions were not in the mood to leave me alone with this robot. I instead tried a new tactic. Can you deliver your diagnostic later? I really want to catch up with my friends. A series of fizzing static sounds and beeps emanated from the robot. It likely needed some maintenance or replacement parts. After a long pause, the robot's eyes flickered 3 times.
Your condition is not life-threatening. I shall deliver my diagnosis later. Shutting down to conserve power.
The robot hovered across the room and into a small alcove hidden behind some overturned furniture. The robot's legs folded up neatly as it shut down. Well now, that sure was unexpected, Crosshair muttered. I think it's damaged. Given how long it was taking to process a simple request, I'll take a look at it later, I said with a hint of weariness. I still felt tired. Being knocked out is no substitute for proper rest. Do you want to talk about your dog tags, Elder? Crosshair asked. I contemplated the question, weighing spilling my guts to them. No, not really, but it would probably help in the long run. Mustang levitated 2 chairs out from a corner and set them by the bed. They both got comfortable as I got ready to talk. I suppose I should explain about these, right? I rattled the dog tags around for emphasis. Every ranger gets one. Initiates, scribes, knights, paladins, etc. It's kind of like a personal record. Mustang raised a hoof to interrupt me. I nodded and let him speak. What do you mean, a personal record holder, Elder? It looks just like a plain piece of plated metal. Well, looks can be deceiving, Mustang. Allow me to demonstrate. I levitated my own dog tag in front of me and carefully pressed it together, whilst unclasping a tiny lock on the bottom. The lock was cleverly concealed inside the plain tag, which popped open to reveal a thin strip, glowing blue with arcane magic. Is that some kind of storage device? Crosshair asked, leaning in closer. Yes, it is, Crosshair. Yes, it is. Think of it like a holotape or recording that you can add to and edit. Normally, it's a scribe's job to add data to dog tags and record everything on them, onto a mainframe. I reassembled my dog tag and put it back on. These dog tags, these pieces of plated metal, and data storage devices, they're all I have left of them. All I have left of everyone I ever knew. Oh, cocknoodles. My eyes were watering. Leaders aren't supposed to cry. Elder, are you? Mustang asked before I cut him off. I'm fine. Just a little overwhelmed. Did I ever tell you about Jackknife? Both stallions shook their heads at me. To be honest, Elder, you've been rather guarded about your past, Crosshair explained. Yeah, sorry about that. I've been trying not to think about the crash or my past much. So, Jackknife. She was a bitch. No, not a bitch. The bitch of our my contingent. I paused for a second to let my words sink in. She got to be queen bitch with her attitude and the fact that she was a senior knight. Not a paladin, you understand, but she outranked regular knights and initiates. Jackknife got some special privileges, like being allowed to bully the lower-ranking knights and initiates, all on account of her special talent.
What was her special talent? Leadership? Using guns?
Mustang asked. I snorted, shaking my head and smiling. No, her talent was a metal detection spell. I could see Mustang and Crosshair were both let down. Hey, that spell was nothing to sniff at. She could fine-tune that spell to detect certain alloys, specifically ones used to make certain weapons. Realization dawned on both Crosshair and Mustang's face. So, due to her unique spell, Jackknife was allowed to be a knight, despite being a unicorn? Crosshair asked. Exactly. And oh, how she enjoyed flaunting that fact, walking around in her damn armor. In fact, let me tell you about when she first got her promotion. Rust. Every wall was covered in layers of rust and grime. The walls had become this rotten mess over a period of years, laying forgotten as the room we designated as a storage space. Now I was tasked with removing 2 centuries of it, a punishment I felt was wholly unjust. I mean, okay, I had been helping Scribe Wavelength tinker and construct a device we found on some old schematics, but I hardly feel that I was responsible for when she tested the device and it blew down one of the walls of our compound. Wavelength got reprimanded and was made to help rebuild the wall. I got lumbered with derusting some of the older rooms. It was dull, boring work, but I was at least allowed to use magic. I levitated a wad of steel wool and used my hoof to scrub another wad of the wiry tool onto the rusty walls. I was almost out of vinegar when I heard a familiar heavy stamping of power armor. No doubt a knight was bringing me another bucket of vinegar.
Ugh. What is that smell? Did somebody spill vinegar?
A mare's voice asked out.
Oh, it's just you, Inky.
The mare finished, giggling to herself. Hello, Jack, I said flatly. Did you see a knight with a bucket of vinegar? I nearly ran out, and she cut me off mid-sentence.
Jeez, Inky. Rude much? At least turn around if you're going to talk to me.
I sighed, turning around and dropping both of my steel wool sponges. Jackknife was there all right, but she was wearing a full suit of power armor, minus a helmet. Her smile only grew bigger seeing my reaction.
Ha! Your expression is priceless.
A white flash blinded me as Jackknife took a photo on the camera she'd been levitating.
Give me that! I'm not letting you post photos of me all around the compound.
I yelled indignantly.
I look like shit. As opposed to how you normally look,
she replied snidely. Not even bothering to say anything, I presented myself with a hoof, swaying it as if saying, look at me and think about what you just said.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Waste of a good photo right there. I'm just celebrating my promotion to knighthood. I want to capture every moment of this day.
Inside, I was privately seething. I really shouldn't have been. She earned the promotion, because it fit her skill set. She walked closer, still smiling brightly. Congratulations, I said sarcastically. I'm sure the wasteland will tremble at your hoof steps, I added in the same pouty tone.
Oh, shut up, Inkwell. You'll get a chance to try on that power armor someday. Probably when you have to set my armor on and try it for me. I'm sure the mare setting will fit you perfectly.
I gritted my teeth, biting back a retort. She was technically my superior officer now.
Come by my quarters later, Inky. You can fill out my requisition forms for me.
Yeah, as if that was happening.
Forget it, Jack. I'm busy enough without having another workload on me. Do your own damn paperwork, I retorted. Ugh, Luda's backside. Inkwell, how can you be so smart and still so stupid?
She was nearly in my face at this point, and if looks could kill, I'd have had a nice hole in my head. Suddenly, she lurched forward, and our heads collided. Cursing in bewilderment, I tried to shove her back. Unfortunately, power-armored mares are pretty heavy, and I only succeeded in mashing our faces together even more. Finally, after some moments of more awkward face mumbling, Jackknife pulled back, her face showing disappointment.
This, armor is hard to get used to,
she said abruptly, then turned away and left me to myself. I pulled myself off of the nasty, runny wall with a horrible sucking sound. My coat was stained with rust. Nearly crying in anguish, I left my punishment unfinished. I needed to be clean again, and was later reprimanded for tricking a few of the other initiates into finishing my work.
And that's just one of the times she made a mess for me to clean up,
I finished, a little anger heating in my words.
It took days to get that red out. There's one good thing that came of it. She stopped calling me Inky after that.
Elder, do you understand the concept of romance?
Mustang asked, completely out of the blue.
It has something to do with neurochemical stimulants and some type of courting methods, usually towards a mare, right?
Crosshair face-huffed so hard it made a cracking sound. You are doomed, Elder, Crosshair stated sadly, shaking his head as he got up. I'm not sure how you missed all of those signs.
Signs?
What was he talking about? There was nothing that I missed. Crosshair's face had frozen whilst I was pondering, a devious smile on his face. Elder, have you ever had sex before? I felt my face redden very quickly.
Crosshair, that's none of your business.
Crosshair and Mustang were giving me those judging looks again.
Hey, I've done it before. I'm not a virgin. It took hours.
Right.
The two rangers said in eerie unison.
We'll just let you get some sleep now,
Mustang stated, standing up. That is right, Elder. Try to avoid any amorous dreams, won't you? We do not want you falling out of the bed. The two stallions walked out of the room, leaving me with a growing sense of dread. I managed to get a couple hours of much-needed sleep after Crosshair returned and assured me that the stable door was shut. I slept comfortably. No dreams of vague fires or images of evil zebras. When I awoke, feeling truly refreshed for the first time in ages, I was eager to get out of the bed. Unfortunately, my ribs were still giving me trouble. The pain wasn't unbearable, but it did make me think twice about sudden movements. A cool syringe of Med-X that I had to convince Crosshair to give me, and I was almost ready to go. We ate a quick breakfast of 200-year-old sandwich in a can, peanut butter and raspberry jelly. The can was a lie, though. You had to spread the jelly and butter on the bread yourself. It made me a little off-put, and subtle suggestions of what I would do to the inventor if it turned out he was ghoulified pleasantly lurked at the back of my mind. Riding the elevator to the top, I finished what was left of my lie in a can. We entered the Overstallion's office later, now without the deadly robots ready to kill us. I tapped onto the wall suspiciously, hearing a hollow clang of a hidden room. That was where TIT had decided to hide some backup for their employees' protection. There was a large terminal that took up the back wall, which likely held all of the stable's instructions. Curious, I accessed it, finding it to be surprisingly enough not password protected. The screen flickered as I was on the main menu. I scrolled through the options before selecting the Stable Instructions tab. Two more popped up, the Stable Tech Instructions and the TIT Instructions. I tried the Stable Tech one first.
Greetings, Overmare. You have been chosen to lead this stable in an exciting endeavor. We here at Stable Tech believe that somewhere along the way, Ponykind lost its way. That is why your stable will be participating in an exciting joint company project with Trotworth's Independent Technologies. That's TIT for short. The goal of this stable is to...
The message cut off abruptly and was replaced by the sound of static. Testing 1, 2, 3. The hell? Did somebody actually record over something as important as stable instructions? More static filled our ears before a new voice finally replaced it. Hello. This is Pine Strike Trotworth, CEO of Trotworth's Independent Technologies. Well, hello back to you. Things had just gotten very, very interesting. Our company has had the pleasure of working with Stable Tech, a joint project full of risk and unique opportunity. There was a pause and muffled whispering, and the sounds of some pony crumpling up and throwing away a piece of paper. The stable is not a proper stable. It's been converted into an ammo storage and testing laboratory. Plenty of other stables we're building will be used for their intended purpose. Stable Tech is unaware of this, and their employees in this stable must be left unaware of this deception as well. In the event of a highly improbable mega-spell apocalypse, or outright destruction of Equestria, this stable will close automatically. There'll be enough food to keep the senior-most staff alive and well before they can migrate to another one of our stables. There will also be an adequate amount of radiation and hazardous environmental survival equipment for the trek throughout the potentially irradiated ruins of Stable 12. You will no doubt have noticed the numerous amounts of robots around this particular stable. They were intended as a part of some idiotic stable tech experiment, but have been repurposed as security robots. You should already know this due to the many safety briefings, but I'll say it once more. Do not try to take testing or training equipment from the stable or firing range. This, as you know, will result in the stable security system turning hostile, until the stolen equipment is returned or the stable security is reset. Fortunately, you can do this from your desk, or if it comes to it, you can always reset the system from engineering or the stable security offices. We hope that... There was a sigh of exasperation and mutterings we couldn't make out before the tape cut off abruptly. I guess that explained the robot's behavior. The massive robot following us must have assumed that we had taken weapons from the firing range. I faced Hoof, thinking of the waste it had turned out to be after all. If only we'd have known before, Hoof. Well, at least we know what we're dealing with, Crosshair stated nonchalantly as he rifled through the Overstallion's desk. I think you know what we need to do, Elder. I nodded in agreement. Yep. Obviously, we're just going to have to disable the robot. Crosshair cut me off, slamming his hoof onto the Overstallion's desk. No, Elder. We have to destroy them. Machines cannot be trusted. You ponies were too reliant on them during the war. That was complete nonsense, of course. The zebras had used war machines all the time. For a moment, there was complete silence, and I noticed Mustang and Crosshair were staring at me. Mustang in interest, and Crosshair in a mix of loathing and denial.
Go on.
Did I just say that out loud? I asked hesitantly.
You did, Elder. Though, to be fair, it is a valid argument.
Mustang responded diplomatically, taking a neutral side. I glared at him a little for being so neutrally not on my side. Well, my point still stands. Zebras used robots just as much as ponies did. Hell, maybe even more than us later some point in the war. Shrugging, I trotted to the Overstallion's desk and accessed his terminal. If some of the reports are to be believed, they were eventually going to try and fight only with them. Crosshair huffed in obvious anger. Flailing his head around, he started to bang his hooves on the floor.
No,
he said, his voice a bit strangled.
Lies. Evil. Ugh.
For a moment, he just took a large breath and then slowly let it out, his face turning a bit red. I was suddenly worried that he might pop a blood vessel or something.
Whoa there,
Mustang said in concern, pushing his hooves onto Crosshair's shoulders.
You have to calm down. The Elder is only speaking what he believes to be true.
It was true, but it seemed like a bad time to point that out. Cross, go lie down. Mustang, go with him and make sure he does. They stood around for a little bit, Crosshair half looking like he wanted to lash out at me. Mustang guided him from the room, keeping a firm hoof on his shoulder. I'd waited until they had entered the elevator before I began examining the Overstallion's terminal. It contained a helpful map of the stable and showed all the pip-buck signatures and robots patrolling the upper and lower floors. There also seemed to be something called OS Def Mies. I was really sure I'd never heard anything like that before. Selecting it, I suddenly had to cling to my desk as it groaned and shuddered. With a squeal of metal, the circular dais it rested upon rose up, and twin-linked Gatling lasers deployed from its sides. Staring over the front, I couldn't help but mutter in amused excitement. Whoa! This was awesome. My desk, had a roof and a desk-mounted Gatling laser. I had to show it off to the guys sometime. I selected the OS Def Mies option again and then proceeded to select the stable security robots, shutting them all down. The robot blips vanished from the map all at once. I got up and decided to go inspect the firing range. Maybe test out a couple of the exotic bullets. Shot by shot, bullets hit the target, I sang cheerfully, watching as the last green-tipped bullet exploded into a corrosive burst of acid on the pony-shaped target at the end of the range, leaving a nasty puddle. I made a quick note on the clipboard I had found and proceeded to the next loaded assault rifle. There was a line of them sitting along the table. They'd been there a long time, but hadn't needed much in the way of maintenance. Pulling out the clip, I managed out a single round and wrote a serial number down and a brief description. Loading it back in, I leveled the rifle at the next target. The door to the range hissed open, and a familiar medical robot hovered in, dragging a gurney with its gripper claw.
Ah, there you are, ticket unidentified. You are alone now, and I am pleased to report you have a developing addiction.
Worst bedside manner ever. I am not addicted. I had to take those medic syringes. I was in pain. The robot's eyes flashed, making fizzing sounds as it processed what I said.
Typical addict in denial. I am required to provide medical attention. Now that you are aware of your condition, you are obligated under company policy number 1345J8 to immediately undergo treatment.
I don't want you to perform surgery, you malfunctioning tin can, I shouted, backing away from the advancing robot. I needed my power armor back, approximately 5 minutes ago.
Medical procedures are mandatory and non-negotiable, young lady, even if I have to incapacitate you to treat you.
The robot brought its buzzsaw arm forward with a whine and charged at me. Telekinetically pulling the rifle close to me, I settled the butt against my chest and pulled the trigger. The recoil slammed the rifle against me, but I cushioned it with my magic. The rifle chattered almost happily, slamming round after round into the rushing robot. Each bullet hit with a small blue arc of electricity, punching holes into the light armor. As the dead weight of the bot fell upon me, I shoved a hoof up, bracing the still flailing armature away from me. Jamming the barrel of the gun up against one of the holes, I held the trigger down until it clicked empty. Pushing the bot back, it clattered to the ground. Taking a deep breath, I levitated the clipboard over and marked off EMP round functionally in the box. Looking around, all I could do was wish that Mustang or even Crosshair had seen how epic I just looked. Why couldn't I do stuff like that when I wasn't alone? I let out a resigned sigh. It suddenly occurred to me that I had supposedly shut down all the robots. I guess medical and maybe maintenance robots were excluded. Getting over it, I levitated the robot out and onto the firing range, and with some difficulty, set it up like another target. May I join you, Elda? I turned to see Crosshair standing by the door, giving me a blank look. Yeah, of course you can. Grab a gun, Ranger. You can help me test out some of these bullets. Crosshair trotted over to the table of guns and began examining them. He finally selected a sniper rifle, but took a moment to swap out the scope for one he'd been carrying in his saddlebag. I have to test out my new scope, Elda. It's going in my zebra rifle after all, Crosshair explained before he loaded a clip of experimental bullets into his rifle. He took aim at the expired dock I had propped up and fired. What happened next was a thing of beauty. The round exploded out of the muzzle in an eye-searing blast of light and heat. The flaming bullet left a streak of afterimage along my retinas, before bursting violently against the lightly armored robotic hull. With a resounding roar, a pillar of flame burst through the top of the bulbous chassis. Before the flames could reach the ceiling above, a series of chemical retardants blasted out of the barely visible vents. Almost as soon as I understood what was happening, at least a third of the roof opened up, revealing extractor fans, which powerfully suctioned the dense smoke and powder. My mane flapped against my face as the turbine-generated wind sucked air from behind me. Then, with a suddenness that was almost startling, it all retracted back in, leaving the firing range almost as if nothing happened. The only visible remains were the now half-melted chemical powder-coked husk of the medical bot. Small shards of metal rained down in plinks and patters, tinkling merrily in my ringing ears. I slowly swiveled my head towards Crosshair, my hooves coming up to frame my face in astonished wonder. Wow, I said breathily, feeling like a little foal discovering the beauty of guns for the first time. That was awesome! That was not awesome, Elda. That bullet was incredibly dangerous. What if it jammed in the barrel and it exploded? Crosshair pointed out, trying to bring me out of my gun-induced high. Ah, no, shh, I said, interrupting him. Can we talk for a minute? Need to let certain body parts settle down. Crosshair gave me a confused look as I dashed from the room. I didn't have time to think on it as I dashed into the closest public bathroom. Slamming the door behind me, I turned on the faucet at full blast. Immediately, I started yelling in pain. I turned on the wrong side, and it was practically molten hot. I quickly splashed my face with cold water, but my face was still stinging like crazy. I couldn't think straight like this, too many little nerves prickling me. I placed my hooves on the counter and reached for the cold tap when my hoof slipped, causing me to headbutt the mirror. I yelped as I cut my face and stumbled backwards, falling and hitting the back of my skull, while bits of glass showered down on me. I rolled to sit up, embedding small pieces of glass into my back, making the situation worse. Sweet Luna's rounded backside, this hurt. I very carefully trotted over to another mirror and used it to look at my back and pick out as many pieces of glass I could manage with my magic. Once that was done, I cleaned my face up the best I could and dabbed water on my cuts. I spotted a Ministry of Peace medical box beside the door and pulled it open. There was no medics inside, but there was a healing potion. I glanced outside the bathroom briefly and then levitated my last vial of sweet pain-killing medicine out of my tail where it had been hiding. I glanced inside the medicine box and pulled out a length of medical tubing, tying it around my right leg to expose a vein. I tightened the vein with my teeth and left hoof, and using my magic, injected the syringe of painkiller. Cold and smooth relief flooded through my body, numbing all my little aches and pains. I sighed contently, just enjoying the sensation before I popped open the healing potion and sipped on the delicious cherry flavor, letting it knit my cuts closed. With a yelp, I put my hoof up to my right ear, looking into the mirror. I could see a bit of glass still hanging in it, the skin healing around it. Whipping the bit of glass out, I downed the last of my healing potion, but it was too late. The skin had completely closed and the small hole remained. Maybe no pony would notice. I just had to pretend my ear was always pierced. Who really focuses on a pony's ear anyway? I mean, I wasn't going to obsess over it or anything. I flipped it a few more times with my hoof, just to make sure it wasn't going to change on me. Nope. With a last glance at it in the mirror, I turned and walked out of the restroom. Outside, I walked into Mustang, who gave me a suspicious look.
Are you okay, Elder? I heard strange noises coming from the bathroom.
Of course you did. I wasn't, rather I was, having some trouble? An awkward silence descended as I let Mustang's imagination fill in the pieces.
I see. Well, now you're feeling better?
There was that awkward pause again.
Perhaps you'd like to join me. I was going to inspect Hailstorm. Perhaps you could fix up your own power armor.
Mustang had a point. I couldn't spend all of my time productively testing out bullets. I had to fix up my power armor, get back out there, and recover some more technology. After finding my first stable, I just knew I was going to be hooked on that feeling of discovery and reclamation. And the bullets. That sounds like a good idea, Mustang. I'll need your help to carry it, though. It's kind of heavy.
Fascinating. I see why Steel Rangers are so successful now. This armor could turn any pony into a walking tank,
Mustang said. His tone was one of wonderment.
So, why did you only bring one suit?
I looked up from my armor. We had relocated to the Pip-Buck Technician Workshop, and I'd slowly been stripping the warped plates from the equally bent infrastructure. The room was overflowing with machining equipment, and I found it hard to contain my excitement at moments. Random squeaks squeaking out before me as I couldn't stop them. Containing another shot of happiness, I thought over Mustang's question. Well, I brought a lot of replacement parts, but taking an entire suit would have been way too expensive, and they only helped me carry so much, I explained. Theoretically, I could have carried another suit if I'd have time to get another one from the airship's armory lockers.
Ah, that makes sense. So, when do I get a suit?
Mustang asked. It was a good question. Unfortunately, I didn't have any good answers. If there was any power armor in Wintertrot, they would have been stored in military facilities, which would be in lockdown or heavily guarded. I could potentially jury-rig some extra servos I have at the moment to help build a frame, but I'm going to need much more armor and parts. It'd just be better to find a complete suit and customize it to your size.
Are you saying I'm fat?
Mustang asked, his eyes flashing alarmingly. His lower lip trembled almost imperceptibly, and I couldn't help but worry that things might go drastically downhill in that moment. Oh, of course not, Star Paladin. I merely meant because you have a taller and more muscular body than myself for Crosshair, I explained in my best apologetic tone. Mustang glared at me suspiciously before finally speaking.
I understand, Elder. Just don't call me fat. I work very hard to maintain my figure.
I nodded and decided to focus on inspecting my leg servos and pistons to ensure they were all still properly functioning. Taking a power clamp, I started exerting pressure to pop the warped plate off. With a loud metal bang, the plate flew off, ricocheted off the ceiling, and impacted along one of the mesh locker doors. For a moment, Mustang and I just looked at it, then back at one another. Whoops, I said, almost as an afterthought. I left the plate there as I checked over the damaged internals. The self-repair talisman was at least still working, but it would need more scrap metal. It had run out at some point, most likely while I was being squished by an oversized security robot. Looking at one of the power junctions reminded me to check over my magi drill. I was fairly certain it was fine, but squinting in thought, I looked at Mustang. I think I know how I can get you that power armor after all. I was sprinting back to the firing range, giddy as a colt firing his first laser rifle. Mustang followed, asking pointless questions like,
Where are we going?
And,
Wait! Stop! There's a hole in the floor.
I burst into the shooting range after the door politely whooshed open. With a sudden halt, Mustang and I simply stared at the scene before us. Crosshair was sitting sedately, eating a packet of animal crackers, calmly topping them with a dollop of green toothpaste. Hold on, I stated. I'm just gonna leave and come back in and maybe I'll understand what's going on. I stepped back to the door, closed it, opened it again, then stepped through. Staring for a moment longer did nothing to help. Yeah, still not getting it, I said flatly. I do not see what the problem is, Elder. I found this delicious wintergreen mint cream and decided to have lunch early. Mustang said eloquently. I winced away, having much the same thought process. You do know that's for brushing your teeth, right? Why would I brush my teeth? Crosshair asked, sounding a bit more confused than he should. Gingivitis, abscesses, tooth decay, just to name a few reasons. How else are you supposed to clean your teeth? I asked incredulously. Mustang's eyes boggled out.
Do you even floss? Flossing? Like candy floss?
Crosshair asked, still chewing the cracker. Stop eating that! It's bad for you! I yelped. You were going to throw up. God, how much have you eaten so far? We looked at the table he was sitting at. There were 3 or 4 completely empty tubes, crumpled and squeezed for what looked like every last drop. I mean, one was even split open, the insides licked clean. Oh my Celestia, I'd laugh if I didn't know how much this was going to suck for you.
What are you talking about?
Mustang and I fled from the room. You have to clean that up later, I yelled as we escaped the horrible sounds of Crosshair's suffering. We spent a while sitting outside the door. A long, awkward while, filled only with the faint sounds of what I'm fairly certain was Crosshair's sickly moaning.
That was, educational?
Mustang said uncertainly, shattering the quiet.
Why were we going to the firing range anyway, Elder?
Mustang asked. I was going to ask Crosshair where the mining facility was. They have exoskeleton rigs that they put drills on, like my magi drill. I can use them to make you a set of armor, I explained. Mustang's face brightened at the mention of his own suit. At least, I think I can. I believe. Maybe.
Well, why didn't you say so? Let's go ask our striped friend.
And then he opened the door, to a sight that will haunt me until the day I die. There was Crosshair, laying in a pool of minty green puke, trying to stand up, but slipping and falling back into it with wet sounds. Reaching over, I closed the door. Let's wait, I said, trying to bleach my brain. We'll ask him when he's better and cleaned up. Mustang nodded in agreement, his own face looking quite pale. We didn't see Crosshair until dinner time, which gave us ample time to finish working on my power armor. We were in the stable's public cafeteria, Mustang cooking in the kitchen whilst I set up a table for us. Crosshair walked in unsteadily into the room, clean and showered, but still looking sick as he slumped under the table. Why are equestrian goods so deceptive? Crosshair mumbled, his face resting on the table. I mean, who cares about taste if you're not supposed to eat it? Crosshair groaned, clenching his stomach. So, how do you normally clean your teeth, Crosshair? I asked, genuinely curious to know how he'd been taking care of his teeth. We take a cloth and dip it in a special solution. Then, we use that damn cloth to clean our teeth. I did not even know toothpaste existed until today, Crosshair explained, before curling up and grabbing his stomach. You'll be fine, Crosshair. You just have to take some deep breaths, maybe eat something else if you don't feel so bad. We didn't need to wait long, as Mustang returned with a large omelet on a platter. I scooped a few hooffuls on my plate, then took a tentative bite. It tasted awesome. I started shoveling as much into my face as I could.
Where did you get these eggs?
I asked, cheeks bulging.
No, I got them from a radigator nest when we were still on the surface.
I managed to force myself to swallow the first mouthful, rather than spray it on the table. Did you just say radigator eggs? I asked a little queasily.
Oh yes, Elder. Best eggs you can get, unless you want to try stealing a cockatrice or other killer bird eggs,
Mustang said before adding.
After all, a radigator won't follow you far inland, but an angry bird will chase you for miles.
Where did you even get the radigator eggs? Crosshair asked, munching away at his own eggs.
I found them in a riverbed before I came to Wintertrot. Sold half of them to a merchant for a good deal on some canned food,
Mustang replied. We sat in silence. No more words needed to be said as we ate through our food. The radigator omelet had a spicy taste to it, but still tasted awesome, even if it was a bit disturbing where it came from. I waited until we nearly finished to speak again. So, Crosshair, how far are we from those mining facilities? I asked. Crosshair didn't immediately reply, chewing slowly on his omelet.
We are roughly 2 days from the mines. 3 if you want to take your time and be careful.
Crosshair paused, tapping himself on the table.
You want to go to those mines, don't you?
He glanced at Mustang and myself and groaned. What's wrong with those mines, Cross? Are they full of monsters? Dangerous natural hazards? Rogue robots? Cultists? I asked, trying to lay out as many scenarios as I could think of.
The area around the mines are booby-trapped by creatures living there. They doggedly hunt down anything that tries to enter those mines.
I laughed out loud at his pun, bits of eggs flying everywhere. After giving me the stink eye, Crosshair continued.
And they are fiercely territorial. Please tell me we are not going there. I'm afraid we must tonight, Crosshair,
Mustang said in a somber tone.
The mine's the only place we know we can find suits of power armor for us.
Crosshair sighed, standing up and then taking my plate.
I'm still hungry,
Crosshair said with his mouth half full.
We'll need to be at full strength for the trek. Plenty. We will not have time to stop tomorrow.
Crosshair stood up, now more steadily than we had first arrived.
I'm sure he's exaggerating, Elder,
Mustang said, though his tone was clearly conflicted.
I am not, Crosshair said seriously. If we don't want to die, we'll have to be constantly moving. There will be no time for rest.
On that note, Crosshair left us sitting there, wondering what awaited us.
It's a bit loose, Elder. What did you do to my barding?
Crosshair inquired as we suited up and prepared to leave. We were standing before the stable door, our equipment arrayed around us as we prepared to leave. Mustang was fussing over Hailstorm, and I was having trouble clipping on my Magi gel to my leg plating. I only treated the metal alloys to harden them, Crosshair. Maybe they stretched out a bit. I had taken to closing up some bullet holes his recon armor hadn't fully stopped for its previous owner. I hoped. Like any good leader, I had stolen away his armor and made a few tweaks and treated the armor for some hardening solvents.
Did you all remember to return all the testing guns?
Mustang asked, now finished adjusting Hailstorm to his battle saddle. Yes, Mustang, we double, and at Night Crosshair's insistence, triple-checked. My Magi drill finally connected with my power armor once more. I had made all the repairs I could and let the auto-repair feature work its magic on what I couldn't.
Then let us be off, Elder. We've got dangerous territory to pass through,
Mustang said, rather too jovially for my liking.
Yes, Star Paladin, and that's just leaving the stable. Wait until we're on the streets again, and we only have to worry about snow pirates, raiders, and super stallions,
Crosshair stated flatly. I opened the door using the little control terminal. The door hissed and slid inward before an arm swung down and pulled it aside. We were greeted by the sight of dozens upon dozens of ghostly blue eyes as ghouls stared at us in surprise. I felt my back legs lock up, fear seizing me into its icy grip. With a surge, they all came in, pooling around each other in a storm of thundering hooves. Out of the rushing herd, I heard a voice call out,
"All right. Which one of you idiots changed the password?"
Footnote. No significant level progression.
Do you even floss?